Welcome to Spot Check, the weekly video update series for The Greatest Unreality, a dissertation about Dungeons and Dragons. Well, after a month, I've returned from my fieldwork trips to Denton, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. Still processing through a lot of those interviews, as you might expect, but I do have some thoughts that I wanted to share about some experiences I had in Seattle in particular that have sparked some thoughts in me. So one of the things I did in Seattle is that I invited a colleague of mine who lives up in that area, who's an anthropologist, but not a gamer, to come along for some interviews and a game day that they had up in Seattle to kind of observe and give me some outside feedback. Now, anthropologists as a whole, or for the most part, I should say, are generally comfortable with the idea of insider anthropology, the idea that I, as a gamer, have a certain perspective on gaming, and that's different from someone on the outside, but that some sort of objective, clinical, scientific approach to the object of study in anthropology is generally understood not to be A, possible, and B, necessary. Now, there are some anthropologists who still, the questions that they're asking still lead them to try and maintain sort of an objective scientific as traditionally understood kind of distance from their subject matter, but a lot of anthropologists also acknowledge that we're always going to have a position, even if we're trying to mask that and control it. So we still strive for objectivity, but it's understood that it's okay to have an insider perspective, and to acknowledge that perspective in your research can help make it more human and engaging on a lot of levels. And I'll talk more about that as the project goes on, and especially as I begin writing later on in the year. But besides providing an outsider perspective, and Sarah was able to give me lots of insights and things that she noticed as someone from the outside that I kind of take for granted as someone who's been playing for a while. But besides those insights, I got to see something that I was unexpected in bringing in someone who is new to gaming. And that's the sort of evangelistic nature of the hobby. This isn't true of all gamers, but a lot of gamers really enjoy, and a large part of the experience of gaming for them is introducing new people to the hobby, and growing the hobby is a common topic of conversation. And so by bringing Sarah along, I was able to see, especially at the game day where she's getting introduced to various board games and things that she had never encountered before, this sort of enthusiasm for bringing new people into the hobby. And it's something that I hadn't reflected on yet as far as what that says about the culture of gaming in general, and specifically looking at how people are brought into the game and how that changes the experience of a game when you have someone new. I've heard a lot of dungeon masters or even players say that they have a different kind of fun when there's someone new learning the game for the first time at the table. And there's a lot of reasons that could be, and I've been speculating here, and I've not come to any final conclusions, but kind of thinking along with you as I process through these things. One of the things that happens there is that you hear a lot of gamers talk about wanting to get back to they talk about the first experience they ever had playing a role-playing game, or the first time it really clicked with them, maybe, if they didn't have good initial experiences. You hear a lot of gamers talk about wanting to get back to that kind of early experience, and there's a certain way, I think, of looking at a gamer's life history as a common trajectory that I see is people having really amazing initial experiences, and then for some reason or another, they might lose some of that initial fun, and then they try different ways to get back to it. And often they can be very successful with that. But by having someone new at the table, because of that intersubjective, to use our word from last week, because of the intersubjective nature of the imagination that happens at the table, having that person at the table who's experiencing it for the first time brings that sort of freshness to the gaming experience. And so I think that part of what's going on when people are interested in bringing new people into the hobby is getting to see that excitement reflected in their eyes. If you think back to what I said about Liz saying that part of the game for her is seeing the world and the characters reflected back to her through the other players at the table, that nature of that reflection changes when you have a new player, and some people even call them virgin players, which I think emphasizes the sort of induction that's going on. But having someone new at the table where they're in that fresh experience changes the nature of what you're going to experience at the table. So I think that's one of the things that's going on. Another factor that might be involved here is broader issues of geek culture. More and more geeks tend to identify themselves and describe themselves as being people who get excited about things in very particular ways. So it's not even so much the things that they're getting excited about, but the way that they're getting excited about it. This would be marked by sometimes unironic, unbridled enthusiasm that can almost be perceived as childlike by non-geeks in some ways. And part of what's going on there in sociological terms is that geeks are about re-enchanting the world with a sense of wonder. At least that's one way of looking at part of what's going on in geek culture. But if you think of that aspect and that unbridled enthusiasm, then it sort of makes sense why part of that would be sharing that with other people. It's sort of a vision of the world as exciting and full of fun things that you can get excited about. And so seeing other people get excited about that and spreading that seems a natural outflow of embracing the excitement that gamers have about gaming. So that might be part of the broader social thing that's going on there. So those are two things that might be leading to some gamers to have this strong focus on bringing new people into the hobby. It both flows naturally out of their excitement for what they're doing, and it also changes their experience at the table and helps to continue to sort of fuel the experience with freshness in certain ways. So those are two potential factors or causes that might be leading to gamers emphasizing bringing other people into the hobby. And what I'd like to focus on next week is looking at some of the effects. When a gamer is focused on bringing other people into the table, or when there's a new gamer at the table, how does that change the style of play? How does that change gaming preferences? Do certain gamers tend to focus on certain types of game because they're easier to bring people into? And that's what I'll be looking at next week. In the meantime, in the comments, let me know what are your thoughts on why we want to bring new people into the hobby. It's a very common thing. Or maybe you're a gamer who says, no, we've got enough people in the hobby, we don't need to focus on that anymore, and I don't really care if any new people ever play the game. So let me know your experiences and thoughts on that topic. Why are we doing this? Why might some people not be focused on that? And what might it say about broader issues of gaming culture and geek culture? I look forward to hearing from you on that, and I will see you next week.